Mount Vernon, Virginia, December 14th, 1799. Albin Rawlins is not a physician. He manages Washington's estate, the crops, the accounts, the daily operations of the property. At 3 in the morning, he is standing at Washington's bedside holding a lancet. Washington asked him to do this. The former president woke up, unable to swallow. His throat had closed in the night. He sent for Rawlins before he sent for a doctor. He asked to be bled. Rawlins made an incision in the inner arm and drew close to 1/2 liter of blood. Washington waited for the relief that was supposed to follow. It did not come. This is his case file. Bloodletting is among the oldest medical procedures in recorded history. Hippocrates codified it around 400 BCE as the primary treatment for fever, inflammation, and most acute illness. The reasoning was systematic. The body contains 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Health is balance. Illness is excess. The correction is removal. For 2,000 years, this was medicine. By the 19th century, the practice had spread so completely that France alone was importing 40 million litres per year to meet medical demand. Rural ponds were being drained of them. In America, the procedure had its most prominent advocate in Benjamin Rush, physician, founding father, signatory of the Declaration of Independence. Rush believed in aggressive removal. During the 1793 Philadelphia yellow fever epidemic, he bled patients of up to 4/5 of their estimated blood volume. He reported success. His contemporaries disputed the figures. His authority remained intact. When George Washington became ill in December 1799, Benjamin Rush was the most influential physician in the country. He was not in the room. His methods were. 3 physicians attended Washington over the course of December 14th. James Craik arrived first, around 9 in the morning. He had been Washington's personal physician since the French and Indian War, over 40 years. He had treated the man on campaign, cared for his household, watched him age from a soldier into a president, and then into a retired farmer on the Potomac. When he arrived at Mount Vernon that morning, he found Washington sitting upright in bed, breathing with visible effort, his throat too swollen to permit easy speech. Craik assessed the presentation and ordered a second bleeding. Approximately 900 milliliters were removed. Washington did not improve. Craik sent for 2 colleagues, Gustavus Richard Brown, a senior physician from Port Tobacco, Maryland, and Elisha Dick, the youngest of the 3, 37 years old, recently established in Alexandria. By the time Dick arrived, Washington had been bled twice. Dick examined the patient. He took in the presentation, the rapid overnight onset, the complete obstruction of swallowing, the fever, the worsening respiratory effort. He formed a diagnosis that differed from his colleagues. Dick believed Washington was suffering from Sinanchi trachealis, what modern medicine would identify as acute epiglottitis, infection, and severe inflammation of the epiglottis, the small cartilage flap that covers the trachea during swallowing. When the epiglottis swells to this degree, it begins to occlude, to block the airway itself. The problem was not in the throat, it was at the entrance to the lungs. Dick proposed a tracheotomy. The procedure involved making a small incision in the trachea below the point of swelling, opening a direct passage into the airway. It would bypass the obstruction entirely. The technique had been described in the medical literature. It had been performed. Dick knew it was within the range of what 1799 medicine could attempt. Craik and Brown said no. Their reason, as Dick recorded the following month in a letter to a colleague named Dr. Bainham: the operation was too new. Washington was too weak to survive it. He was too weak because they had taken more than a litre of his blood since morning. Dick did not press the point. He was the youngest man in the room by nearly 4 decades. Craik had known Washington since before the Revolution. The hierarchy operating in that bedroom was not medical. It was biographical. Seniority held, a third bleeding was ordered, then a fourth. Between the bleedings, the physicians tried additional measures. They applied blisters to Washington's throat and administered an emetic, a substance intended to provoke vomiting and, by the logic of humoral medicine, purge the systemic excess. They had him gargle vinegar. The throat did not improve. The breathing did not ease. Washington was administered calomel, a mercury-based compound, and tartar emetic on top of the bleedings. None of the additional measures produced a change in the presentation. By afternoon, he had been bled 4 times in 12 hours. The total volume removed came to approximately 2.5 litres. The average adult body holds between 6 and 7 litres of blood in circulation. Washington had lost close to 40% of his. Throughout, he remained composed. He gave instructions about his burial. He told his secretary Tobias Lear where his wills were kept and which one to use. He thanked the physicians by name. He gave no indication that he doubted what was being done to him. He had recommended bloodletting to members of his household throughout his life and had ordered it for members of the enslaved workforce at Mount Vernon. Workers who had no say in the matter. This was not a treatment Washington tolerated. It was one he believed in completely. By early evening, breathing was becoming a labor. Those present described a man fighting, not against the doctors, not against the treatment, but simply against the slow closing of his own airway. At 10:20 in the evening, he addressed Craik directly. He said, "Doctor, I die hard, but I'm not afraid to go." He died shortly after. Craik, Brown, and Dick each wrote accounts of December 14th. None expressed formal doubt about the decision to bleed. Dick noted his objection to the tracheotomy without condemning his colleagues by name. He was precise. He was not accusatory. He lived until 1825. What he believed, privately, about that afternoon is not recorded. The error at the centre of December 14th, 1799, is not that 3 physicians misread a dying man. It is that the framework they were reading from had already been demolished 171 years earlier. In 1628, the English physician William Harvey published his proof that blood circulates continuously through the body. It does not pool, it does not stagnate, it does not accumulate in excess that can be drained. It moves in a closed circuit, driven by the heart, returning to its point of origin and repeating the cycle indefinitely. The foundational premise of therapeutic bloodletting, that illness could be addressed by removing excess or corrupted blood, was incompatible with Harvey's findings. If blood circulates, there is no fixed excess to correct. The entire mechanical rationale for the procedure had been refuted within Harvey's own lifetime. Bloodletting continued for more than 2 centuries regardless. What Washington's physicians removed was not disease, it was volume. The clinical term for what followed is hemodynamic collapse, the failure of the circulatory system to maintain sufficient pressure to supply blood to the organs. The compensatory response to blood loss, elevated heart rate, constricted peripheral vessels, places additional load on a cardiovascular system already under strain. Washington was 67. He had been ill since the night before. He was in the process of asphyxiating from an obstructed airway. The treatment did not address the obstruction. It accelerated the collapse. Dick's proposed tracheotomy would have addressed the obstruction directly. The incision, made below the point of swelling, would have created an airway that bypassed the inflamed epiglottis entirely. The procedure existed. The technique was documented. The only thing preventing it was a hierarchy of experience in a room where the more experienced men held the wrong certainty. The question of why Harvey's proof failed to end the practice is not a mystery. Institutional medicine is not update by logic. It updates by demonstration, by evidence accumulated until it can no longer be explained away. That demonstration did not arrive until 1836, when the French physician Pierre-Charles Alexandre Louis published the first large-scale statistical analysis of bloodletting outcomes across hundreds of patients. His conclusion: the treatment produced no measurable benefit. It had taken 208 years from Harvey's proof to Lewis's data. James Craik continued to practice medicine after Washington's death. He died in 1814, widely regarded as one of the foremost physicians of the early republic. No formal inquiry was opened. No contemporary body censured him. Benjamin Rush continued to advocate for aggressive bloodletting until his death in 1813. He remained among the most prominent medical voices in America until the end. Elisha Dick continued practicing in Alexandria. He never publicly accused his colleagues. He died in 1825. The letter to Dr. Bainham, in which he documented his tracheotomy objection, was preserved. It is the only record in which the descent of December 14th survives in writing. Bloodletting declined gradually through the mid-19th century, pulled down by accumulated statistical evidence rather than any single case. The procedure did not disappear entirely. Therapeutic phlebotomy is still performed today. For hemochromatosis, a condition of excess iron accumulation in the blood, and for polycythemia vera, in which the bone marrow overproduces red blood cells. In both cases, the removal targets a specific measurable biological excess. The mechanism is understood. The volume is calculated precisely. What Craik and Brown removed from George Washington was not an excess. It was a portion of the fixed volume his body needed to survive. The proof that made Washington's death preventable, Harvey's demonstration that blood circulates and cannot simply be drawn away, had been available to every physician in that room for 171 years. The gap between evidence and practice is not measured in logic. It is measured in patience. One question for the comments. At what point does medical authority become medical harm? The next case file on this channel: 400 people, one town. They could not stop dancing. This is the sealed ward.